Howie Roseman has so many long-term questions to answer on the defensive line. The biggest one, who to pay between Nolan Smith and Jaelan Phillips.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day, and thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase, and today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I feel like I have talked to death about the offensive concerns, question marks, decisions needed to be made this offseason between Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, Nick Sirianni, even like A.J. Brown has a big decision to make. Does he want to get traded? Lane Johnson, does he want to retire? Jalen Hurts, does he want to change his play style? That has been the theme of these episodes since the Eagles got eliminated in the first round of the playoffs by the 49ers. Now, a couple weeks ago, which is sad to say, but Eagles football has been done now this is the second week of offseason episodes we're doing on Locked On Eagles. I've talked to death about the offense because the defense we know is in good hands in the future. Vic Fangio, I don't believe is going anywhere anytime soon. I don't think he's getting a head coaching job anywhere for the rest of his career. I don't think the Eagles would move on. I don't think he's retiring. And when you look at the personnel, how young and elite this defense is, how they carried this football team to a division title in 2025, there's not a lot of question marks on defense, even if, Reed Blankenship leaves in free agency, Nakobe Dean leaves in free agency, Adoree Jackson leaves in free agency, let's say Jaelan Phillips walks this year, they still have stars on all three levels, and not just one or two, but 3+. You look at linebacker, you have Zach Bond and Jihad Campbell still, the defensive line. That's what I want to get into, though, today. There's a ton of stars, but there's some long-term decisions to make. The secondary, we know, set in stone for the future. You have Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Drew Makuba. They're probably going to add some more talent at safety and at corner. The defensive line, like I said, there's a ton of stars there, too. But if I had to say there's one big question mark about the defense this offseason, I would say over the next couple years, is who on that defensive line Howie Roseman is going to prioritize when it comes to giving out contract extensions. He mentioned it during his press conference with Nick Sirianni last week that, hey, naturally, you look at the arc of this team, the life cycle of this football team, all the offensive players that worked out got paid, so the defense had to get younger. And now those defensive players that worked out, which is the vast majority of them, now they need to get paid. The defense is going to get more expensive naturally, and the offense is going to get a little bit cheaper. It's going to even out. It's going to balance itself out. He can't pay everybody, though, even if it gets expensive. And I think, the biggest questions are on the defensive line. Zach Bond already got paid. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are going to get paid. On defense, up front, it's like, okay, I think there's certain things we know. There's no question marks, I think, regarding Jalen Carter. Even though he had a down year for his standards, for the expectations of Jalen, he is going to be the first guy, in my opinion, that the Eagles give a contract extension to this offseason. They're going to pick up the fifth-year option, and I think they're going to pay Jalen. They like to be, if they know a guy is here long-term, they like to pay that guy early. So Jalen Carter's going to get a deal. So, okay, we know that for sure. Jordan Davis, after a career year, he is so instrumental in making this scheme work, right? With the way he is elite at stopping the run on the interior. You can go lighter boxes. He makes that run defense go. And then getting 4.5 sacks this year, producing all the batted passes. He led the league in passes defended this year. The tackles were top 5 among defensive tackles this year. Played all season long. Did not get out of shape in December and January. They picked up the fifth-year option last year. They are going to pay him before this season starts. So I think that's what we know. I think the biggest question on the defensive line and the defense in general is, who are you going to pay at edge rusher? There's 3 guys, and I think they want 2 of 3 to be a part of this future that they intend to give extensions to. So you've got Nolan Smith, you've got Jaelan Phillips, and you got Jalyx Hunt. By the way, at defensive tackle, too, I think we kind of know, as elite as he is, as good as he is, I thought he was just as good as Milton Williams in 2024, if not better, in 2025. I think they're going to let Moro Ojomo walk after this year. He's in a contract season, and if he has another year like 2025, and he was breaking out in 2024 as well, he's going to get that Milton Williams Patriots contract somewhere. Somebody is going to give Moro Ojomo 20, 25, what did Milton get, like 26 million a year or something? They're going to give Ojomo, some team out there, 20, 25 plus $million. Teams love to have elite interior pass rushers. And I think the Eagles see that, okay, not saying Milton Williams and Moro Ojomo were system players next to Jalen Carter, but they're going to see the advantage those defensive tackles had playing next to Jalen, and I think they'll bank on drafting another replacement for Ojomo. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted defensive tackle early this year. I think that's an underrated position they could take that a lot of people are focusing, and they should be, rightfully so, on tight end, right tackle, even edge rusher, corner, receiver if A.J. Brown's gone. But don't be surprised if they draft a pass rushing defensive tackle, because I think we know Ojomo, as much as I would love to give him an extension, I don't know if he'll be here beyond 2026. The big question is about edge rusher, and it's about, to me specifically, Nolan Smith versus Jaelan Phillips. Because I think Jalyx Hunt, look, he still has 2 more years on his rookie contract, but when you look at the versatility and how perfect the style of player he is for a Vic Fangio defense, the way that he broke out this year as a pass rusher, led the Eagles in sacks, led the Eagles in pressures. He was atop the NFL in all of these advanced pass rushing metrics. He led the Eagles in interceptions as well. The first Eagle in NFL in franchise history to lead the team in both sacks and interceptions in a single season. He was so good in coverage. His explosiveness, he's only going to get better. The raw traits that he has. Jalyx Hunt, I think, is going to be a part of this future. Fangio wants him to be a staple of this defensive line. So for me, what does that come down to? You can't pay everybody. Carter and Davis are definitely getting deals. I think eventually Jalyx Hunt's getting paid. I don't believe Moro Ojomo's going to get paid. There's one more move. It's do we prioritize this offseason keeping Jaelan Phillips, who we know is a Vic Fangio guy? Phillips led the edge rushers in snaps the second half of the year. He was the guy, even though Jalyx Hunt was breaking out, Jaelan Phillips was the guy that Vic Fangio trusted to play more than Jalyx Hunt, than Nolan Smith. So do they pay Jaelan Phillips $20+ million a year this offseason? Or does Jalen want to maybe bank on himself and have an even bigger year and sign a shorter contract, a 1 or 2 year deal with a city and a franchise that you could tell he really enjoyed playing for? Jaelan Phillips loved being an Eagle. To me, it comes down to, on the defensive line, that or Nolan Smith. I think you're definitely, no matter what, going to pick up the 5th year option on Nolan Smith, but do you give him an extension over Jaelan Phillips? Right now, I think Jaelan Phillips is the better pass rusher. I think he's the more effective player at getting to the quarterback. But it's not just that black and white with who to choose between him and Nolan. Another part of this is Nolan does have that 5th year option, so you have another, what he played in 23, 24, 25. So you have, if you pick up the 5th year option, you would still have 2 more years of his rookie contract with team control on Nolan's deal, whereas Jalen is a free agent right now. And if he doesn't take a short-term deal, he wants a long-term contract, I think you might pick Nolan just because he has more years of cheap salary and you can then extend him early and spread out those cap hits farther. And the other thing is, too, Nolan Smith, I think, is the better run defender than Jaelan Phillips. I think Nolan Smith is their best run defender on the edge. And he, you look at that playoff game, one of the bright spots was his work against Christian McCaffrey on the edge. Every time, that's the other thing, Nolan Smith is a big-time playoff producer. Against Tampa Bay in 2023, he was one of it was him, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert that were the positives of that game. Last year in the postseason, Nolan Smith broke the record for most sacks in a postseason run in Eagles history with 4. This year there were injuries, so yeah, Jaelan Phillips was the more effective pass rusher this year, but I think you can bank on when Nolan's healthy again in 2026. with more snaps, that he will get back to the player he was, not just in the playoffs last year, but after the bye week, after week 5 in 2024, Nolan Smith was your best pass rusher on the edge, even over Josh Sweat, who led the Eagles in sacks, but it was Nolan Smith. So I know Jalen is the more effective pass rusher right now, but I think because of like the contract control with Nolan, you drafted him. He's a leader of this football team, one of the Georgia boys. He's very versatile. He has a lot of raw talent that you still expect him to grow into. The breakout year he had in 2024, the clutch playoff performer he is. I will say, too, when he came back from IR in November, he did have 3 sacks in 6 games, and his numbers were pretty efficient. So I don't think Nolan yet is the pass rusher of Jaelan Phillips. I don't think he has completely broken out as a guy that you could bank on to get 10-plus sacks a year. But I just think about it, and you look at this year, the amount of deals they're probably going to give out to Jalen Carter, to Jordan Davis. They're going to make other moves on offense and on defense. I don't know, maybe the timeline of it too tells me it's Nolan Smith over Jaelan Phillips. But to me, that's like the big question on defense, especially on the defensive line. I think we know Nakobe Dean's gone. Reed Blankenship, it's up in the air. It's down to if he wants a team-friendly deal or not to accept. The big one is, who are we paying on the defensive line? And I think that comes down to who are we paying between Jaelan Phillips and Nolan Smith. I would personally pick Nolan. But when it comes to like predicting who they'll choose, I don't know, because Fangio is a big-time Jaelan Phillips guy. The other thing is, though, too, the injuries. Nolan Smith hasn't suffered serious leg injuries like Jaelan Phillips has. That might be another reason that you bank on Nolan aging better into his contract. Let me know what you think, though. This was a fascinating conversation on X with a lot of my listeners and viewers. So who do you think, Nolan Smith or Jaelan Phillips? Or if you want to throw Jalyx Hunt into this equation and Moro Ojomo, maybe you want to pay Moro over both of those guys. Hit me up at DiBiase LOE or at Locked on Birds. All right, coming up next, we have an update on the Eagles' offensive coordinator search. I'm going to tell you why, at this point, I think there's only 3 names that really excite me. But first, today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day, which is so great when it comes to taxes. TurboTax Full Service. You can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from U2s to self-employed forms, which is big for me with my podcast, and it works to get you every deduction possible. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just only $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Guys, if you want more content from me and from Locked On Eagles, make sure to subscribe to our Everydayer Club at LockedOnPodcast.com/Everydayer or LockedOnEagles.Supercast.com. We got 2 different plans. So for $5 a month, you're going to get our show ad-free, which I know a lot of you prefer. You'll get our show ad-free. You're going to get a membership to our Discord channel where you're talking with Eagles fans, with myself, with other hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. There's an Eagles channel. There's NFL channels for the divisions, the NFC East. On game day, there's a channel as well for that. You'll get a Locked On merch store at your disposal. And then for $15 a month, you get the All Access Pass. So you're going to get one-on-one texting with me. So if you ever have questions about what the Eagles should do in free agency, the draft, what should they do about A.J. Brown's situation, or the future of the head coach and quarterback, Jalen Hurts, but you might want to know what they want to do with Jaelan Phillips as well. Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni. You can text me all throughout the week. And then I also do exclusive episodes for our All Access members. One of them is actually the guest pass. I had Eagles podcast legend John Barchard on my show today. That's on that feed. So if you're interested, head over to LockedOnEagles.Supercast.com. So the Eagles' offensive coordinator search continues. It looks like they interviewed Bobby Slowick yesterday, the Miami Dolphins pass game coordinator, former offensive coordinator and play caller for C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. If you remember, he was a hot commodity, a potential like big name rising in the ranks for a head coach position after 2023 when C.J. Stroud was the best rookie in football, got Houston a playoff win. Then Slowick kind of fell out of favor in 2024 and then was with Mike McDaniel in Miami. So they did complete that interview with Bobby Slowick. Adam Schefter reported that 4 hours ago. And then they also requested to interview, it looks like they did interview Declan Doyle, who was the Chicago Bears offensive coordinator working with Ben Johnson. I don't hate that name. I like the idea of Declan Doyle. It sounds like he's a really smart offensive mind, especially in the passing game. I would love to get somebody from that Ben Johnson coaching tree. When you look at Doyle working with Caleb Williams, I think Caleb took a lot of big steps this year in a lot of ways that Jalen Hurts could grow. So Doyle, I like the idea of a young, up-and-coming offensive coach from a great play caller joining the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't hate that idea at all. Bobby Slowick, I understand. Like, I would love to get somebody from that Mike McDaniel offense who was the Eagles' number one option, and he was my number one option. He did have a track record in Houston of getting a young quarterback, C.J. Stroud, to break out in his rookie season. But Slowick, again, had some of the same issues that Kevin Patullo did, a lot of run, pass, and that scares me a little bit, and his offense kind of got stale and old really quick in 2024, and stale and old and conservative is what we just had to watch in Philadelphia with Kevin Patullo. So I'm kind of in the middle with Bobby Slowick. Declan Doyle, I do like that idea. I could get behind it, but my hesitancy with Doyle is that he's not an experienced play caller. He's not a multi-year play caller like I would prefer. So those names I wouldn't be freaking out. Like Matt Nagy, I don't love that option. Even though he does come from an Andy Reid Kansas City Chiefs offense that's pretty good with quick passing on early downs, run after the catch opportunities, the screen game. I don't hate certain parts of Matt Nagy's game as a coach, but like those interviews, those moves don't move the needle enough for me. I think at this point, there's only like 3 names that would really excite me and make me believe the offense is going to look substantially different in 2026. Like, again, Slowick, Doyle, who did I just say? Matt Nagy, even a Mike Kafka type of, coach. And I think that's going to be the type of hire the Eagles have to make at this point. I think those guys will add new wrinkles, things that I want to see in this offense, like Kellen Moore did in 2024. But the only guys I think could really change things up for this offense next year, where it doesn't still look like a Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni offense, for me at this point, it's Cliff Kingsbury, it's Charlie Weiss Jr. from Ole Miss, and then it's Joe Brady, the former Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator. But the problem is with all 3 of those guys that I really want, Cliff Kingsbury, we've heard no connection with the Eagles, and outside of his interview with the Ravens, I don't know what's going on with him. I actually was talking with Mark Farzetta on our squad show yesterday, and even he mentioned it's like Kingsbury just kind of left the Commanders abruptly, and we really haven't heard much from him since. So I don't know what's going on with Kingsbury. People don't love him, especially because of what happened in Arizona, but I like the air raid style offense for what I want with this Eagles attack, with what they need to change on offense with Jalen Hurts and with this passing game, especially on early downs. I think that could really help Jalen's mobility. I want them to use more wide receiver heavy packages, more 11 personnel, more empty set, less 12 and 13 personnel with condensed looks. So those are only the 3 names at this point that I could get really juiced up for. Outside of that, it's like, all right, it's going to be up to Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni in 2026 to prove they're still the future, that what they've done hasn't gotten stale and the NFL hasn't caught up to. We've kind of hit a ceiling with them. We'll see what happens. But to me, like, those are the 3 names that I could still say would really fire me up a little bit. Is Kingsbury. I'm a big Joe Brady guy. I know Buffalo Bills fans are kind of hit and miss with him. But to me, it's like Joe Brady, you look at his track record at LSU with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson. I thought him and Josh Allen did a lot with a little when it comes to the personnel on the Bills' offensive side of the football. They were the second scoring offense in 2024 with terrible wide receivers. I think Brady deserves some credit for that with the way he kind of had to scheme things up for Allen to get this passing game going. I thought, his mesh concepts, crossers, utilizing the middle of the field, something I'd love to see with the Eagles. Also, the Eagles did interview Joe Brady for their head coaching position in 2021, so there's a direct link there. If he doesn't take that Ravens job, he would be somebody I love to bring in. And then Charlie Weiss Jr., that Ole Miss offense, again, similarities with what Cliff Kingsbury does. That could fit Jalen Hurts' skill set and what I'm looking for. So when it comes to the search, gun to my head, I think you should prepare for a Matt Nagy, a Bobby Slowick, who else? Mike Kafka, a Declan Doyle from the Bears. I think prepare for that. For me, there's 3 guys left out there with Mike McDaniel gone, Brian Dable, I think, off the table for the Eagles, Todd Monken off the table, Nate Scheelhaas I don't think is a realistic option for the Birds. To me, it's Weiss Jr., it's Kingsbury, or it's Joe Brady. Outside of that, I don't know how great I'm going to feel. But we'll see. I still think there's hope. We'll find out. The Eagles are still doing their due diligence. And as soon as they have a hire, we'll have a breaking live show right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Speaking of coaches, though, Christian Parker, the Eagles' former secondary coach, DB coach, is headed to the Dallas Cowboys as their defensive coordinator. And that might not sound like good news, but I do think it's proof of why you should believe, even if there's change this offseason, the Eagles are going to be able to sustain success, especially on defense. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by Game Time. The NFL season, not only in full swing, but we got the conference championships this Sunday, and there's nothing like being at the game. The crowd noise, the energy, cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Game Time app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I pulled up Game Time just the other day to check out some tickets, found options almost instantly. And what I love most about the Game Time app, my favorite feature is being able to see the view of my seat before buying. So there are absolutely no surprises. You can see NFL tickets available for around $100, which makes it easy to plan a game day trip. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. Guys, let me tell you about my favorite sportsbook as well. FanDuel, sponsoring Locked On Eagles today. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets that you like the most. If you like the Seahawks money line over the Rams, maybe you like Jarrett Stidham to pull off the upset over the New England Patriots, open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost that you want to apply. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks that apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs keep rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. All right, wrapping up this Friday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Not great news for the Eagles that they lost a elite assistant coach in Christian Parker, who's joining the Dallas Cowboys as their defensive coordinator, a DB coach that you saw Cooper DeJean's post on social media, Quinyon Mitchell. Christian Parker was instrumental in forming those two into all-pro players in year 2 in 2025. Cooper DeJean was the best slot corner in the NFL. I think from start to finish, Quinyon Mitchell was the best coverage corner in football this year, even over Pat Surtain, Derek Stingley, J.C. Horn had an unbelievable year, and I know he didn't get interceptions until the playoffs, but that's the thing is, he gets interceptions when it matters most. He had 2 picks in the postseason, and teams just didn't throw his way this year. He was top 2 in every stat that mattered. Completion percentage allowed, yards per reception, yards per target. He did not allow a single touchdown all season until the playoffs. I mean, Quinyon was unbelievable, and Christian Parker was so instrumental in that. And that's huge because the Eagles, for years, were not able to find long-term pieces at corner and at safety, too, in the secondary. So, Christian Parker, shout out to you, man. I hate that he joins the Dallas Cowboys, but that guy earned that job, and he's been a big-time go-to for Vic Fangio over the years. And again, him going to the Cowboys is not great news for the Eagles, but it is proof of something that the Eagles didn't used to have be a reality. And it's the fact that I think a huge reason they're going to sustain success, even if the offense sees more change this year than we expected, even if A.J. Brown's gone, even if Dallas Goedert's gone, if Lane Johnson retires this year or next year, even if on defense, Reed Blankenship walks and Nakobe Dean walks, maybe Jaelan Phillips is gone too, and they do prioritize paying Nolan Smith, Jalyx Hunt, and or Moro Ojomo. I think they're going to be okay because this coaching staff, one thing Nick Sirianni deserves a lot of credit for, and Howie Roseman, because he's a big part of bringing in these coaches too, like Vic Fangio, who they wanted to be their DC in 2023 before he went to Miami. And he was actually a consultant in 2022 with that Super Bowl team. So I think Vic Fangio, that move, Howie Roseman gets credit for. But what I've loved about Nick's coaching staff since 2021, something that was not a reality with the Doug Peterson era and even the Chip Kelly era, is how good they are at developing young talent with assistant coaches. Like, they have a bunch of great assistant coaches. Like, Parker was one of them. But how about, too, like Clint Hurt? Clint Hurt is who also I'm really excited to be down at the Senior Bowl with. He is going to be the head coach for the Senior Bowl, I think for the national team. And there are so many good defensive linemen down there this year. To see him working hands-on with those guys when I think the Eagles could use an edge rusher to eventually replace Jaelan Phillips or Nolan Smith, that's huge. He was instrumental in getting Jordan Davis to break out this year, Moro Ojomo and Jalyx Hunt as well. Like, that's something with their assistant coaches, how well they've developed those guys and how well those guys have developed these young players. That was not a reality from like 2000 and the Doug era, the Doug Carson era, 2016 to 2020. They were overly relying on older players that were 30 plus years old, and it felt like every need they had too was answered by a free agent Band-Aid signing or a trade. Like, as much as we love Darius Slay, like, this team couldn't fix corner forever, and so they just traded for Darius Slay. Defensive tackle, we're just going to sign Javon Hargrave, sign Malik Jackson. Wide receiver, we're going to keep sending it back with Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar, and here's Deshaun Jackson in 2019. Oh, Travis Fulgham looks like he's developing. Nope, here comes Alshon back. And, again, Howie wasn't the best drafter back then, but I don't think the coaching staff was nearly as good at developing talent either. Vic Fangio, Christian Parker, Clint Hurt, even like Moorhead, the wide receiver coach, Jeff Stoutland. Nick Sirianni, I'll give him credit for one thing. His hands-on development of talent with young players and his coaches, like, I think that's something they really prioritize. I think that's something the front office really prioritizes now, and scouts. It's a big reason that I believe that, again, yeah, they're going to see change for sure this year on both sides of the football, but I trust this team a lot more to replace talent and not just like a Band-Aid move. Like, oh, that was a solid year we got out of, I don't know, like a Jay Ajayi, right? That was a solid year we got out of a rental player at safety like Kevin Byard or C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Now it's like, no, if they got to replace A.J. Brown, if they got to replace Reed Blankenship or Jaelan Phillips, I just trust this team a lot more. And yeah, a lot of that has to do with Howie Roseman's track record, but there's a reason all these coaches keep getting hired by other teams and these front office members keep getting promoted by other organizations, because what the Eagles are doing right now, again, there's peaks and valleys because of the reality of who you have at head coach and quarterback. There's a lot of ups and there's a lot of downs, but this team has the right formula to build a consistent winner, and that's why guys like Christian Parker get taken away. And it sucks because, again, he was instrumental in the development of Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. But I do think it's also like a testament to how well this team develops young talent now, and that didn't used to be the case. That's why I feel confident that, yeah, it's really hard, as Howie Roseman said in his press conference last week, it's really hard to keep hitting A+ draft class after A+ draft class, but I have a lot of confidence this draft too, with a lot of picks, with more at-bats than anybody in football, that they're gonna replace guys. And I feel good about that. The coaches are going to get the most out of this talent that they have on the roster. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Until Monday, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.